Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now we are going to study about teaching vocabulary. First of all, introduction. The status of vocabulary within the curriculum and the attitude of foreign language teachers toward vocabulary instruction have varied considerably over the years. Grammar translation method, for example, provides a balanced attention to both grammar and vocabulary. During the late 1970s, however, the status of vocabulary has been considerably enhanced. There has been a revival of interest in vocabulary teaching. An adequate vocabulary is essential for successful second language use because without an extensive vocabulary, we will be unable to use the structures and functions which we have learned for comprehensible communication. De Carico 2003 states that vocabulary learning is central to language acquisition, whether the language is first, second, or foreign. In addition, in contrast with the development of other aspects of a second language, particularly pronunciation, vocabulary acquisition does not seem to be slowed down by age. There is no critical period for the acquisition of vocabulary. The vocabulary is central to language and of critical importance to typical language learner. Without a sufficient vocabulary, one cannot communicate effectively or express his ideas in both oral and written form. Having a limited vocabulary is also a barrier that precludes learners from learning of a foreign language. When they do not know how to enrich their vocabulary, for example, they often gradually lose interest in learning. It is undeniable that most learners' vocabulary grows through incidental learning, such as through continuous exposure to comprehensible language in reading, listening, speaking, and writing exercises. Anyhow, this does not mean that explicit vocabulary instruction is less important for foreign language learners. Even though they are keen readers with different materials, they take a lot of benefits from direct vocabulary instruction. They can effectively expand their vocabulary knowledge. Thus, meaningful and interesting instruction should, of course, be organized to achieve successful learning. Underlying principles, psycholinguistic perspective. The learning vocabulary involves storing it first in our short-term memory and afterwards in long-term memory. People generally listen for meaning or ideas. They do not store the verbatim wording unless they intend to. At the stage of output, there are two methods for memory output, namely recognition and recall. In both recognition and recall, people utilize three kinds of outside information, namely the language, the word knowledge, and the discourse. First, people may refer to their language to decide what possible and sensible construction and what are not. Second, they may utilize word knowledge to decide what plausible events and what are not. Finally, they may refer to convention about discourse to decide how a certain discourse is constructed. For example, whether it is a story, a conversation, a paragraph, a speech, etc. In remembering, people retrieve pieces of information from memory in order to reconstruct sentences they claim to have heard or read before. Memorization seems to have different process from remembering. Memory is very important for language learning. Oxford 1990 proposes some memory strategies to aid learning. These help students to store and retrieve information, and this can be done through the following ways. One, creating mental linkages, grouping, associating, placing new words into a context. Two, applying images and sounds, using imagery, semantic mapping, using keywords, and representing sounds in memory. Number three, reviewing well in a structured way. Four, employing action. physical response, or sensation using mechanical techniques. These techniques can be used to greater advantage if we can diagnose learning style preferences, visual, oral, kinesthetic, and make students aware of different memory strategies. Here are some research findings on vocabulary and memory which are worth discussing here since they can guide us, teachers, in planning explicit vocabulary instruction. Number one, research by Grape and Stoller has demonstrated that vocabulary learning requires multiple exposures to new lexical items in various discourse contexts. Multiple exposures of varying intensities and in diverse contexts are said to gradually lead to a large recognition vocabulary. It is also claimed by another researcher, Cody, that a minimum of 10 to 12 exposures is needed for learners to begin to see the range of meanings and uses for new lexical items. Findings such as this suggest that teachers should consider the way in which they systematically recycle important vocabulary in the classroom. Number three, style. Style study has shown that context can be a powerful influence on students' vocabulary growth, but learning words from context is a long-term process during which word meanings are slowly accumulated through exposure and learning. By means of explicit instruction, language teachers can compress the process so that students can learn more words in a shorter period of time. Number four, Quail study on memory and vocabulary development reveals that memorization is very important in language learning, especially vocabulary. The students, as the subject of research, agree that learning vocabulary needs memorization and seriousness. They also agree that although it is very hard to memorize new words, it is the only fast way to improve their vocabulary. Vocabulary learning could not rely on incidental learning or guessing. 86 to 0.67%. Furthermore, to be competent in four language skills, speaking, listening, reading, and writing, students should be good in vocabulary around 98.33%. They also argue that guessing the meanings of unfamiliar words or ignoring them could not satisfy themselves nor help them improve their vocabulary in a fast way. Some classroom activities, yeah. Teachers can devise various activities which relevant for promoting vocabulary learning. Several sample activities presented here can be integrated into second language instruction to promote vocabulary learning and to support language skill development. Number one, semantic networks. It consists of words which share semantic features or semantic components. Its related activity is semantic mapping, that is, an activity that helps bring into consciousness relationships among words in a text and helps deepen understanding by creating associative networks for words. Number two, memorization or vocabulary card system. The language scholars have long been concerned with the important role of memory in second language learning. Even many of them relate the power of memory in their innovation of language teaching methodology. It holds that the more often or the more intensively a memory connection is traced, the stronger the memory association will be, and the more likely it will be recalled. Retracing can be done verbally and or in association with motor activity. Memory is also very important in the development of a second language, and it is vocabulary, which requires more generous treatment for memorization compared with other aspects of second language development. Number three, guessing meaning from context. It is undeniable that developing vocabulary can be managed through inferring word meaning from context. Since guessing word meaning from its context is quite possible, Therefore, it is a good idea for teachers to prepare their students to recognize and utilize the function of the text. Number 4, the word wall approach. The word wall technique developed by Green 1993 is originally designed to challenge and motivate first language students in elementary and secondary classrooms to develop vocabulary learning and to internalize new vocabulary. It utilizes a set of 6 words filled wall panels, each with a different background color corresponding to a different curriculum objective. Each panel includes lexical items selected from vocabulary lists corresponding to classroom readers and lists of high-frequency English words. Green uses his walls of words for various classroom lessons, accommodating individual, pair, small group, and whole class instruction. Even he uses the word wall for any other classroom activities such as games, thesaurs, implicit learning, multiple exposures, and spell checking. Uh, some other activities, yeah. Number 1, the description of activities below shows that different traditional vocabulary building activities can be adapted with the word wall techniques. Number 1, word clustering. The word clustering is a type of activity in which students can make connection between new and known items. The grouping of words may include clusters of typically related lexical items such as elections, which include political parties, campaign ball box, taking a poll, polling place, conventions, taking a straw vote, inaugural address, etc. Number 2, pairs of synonyms and antonyms such as impeach, disadvantage, paternal, widespread, elect, unprivileged, maternal, limited, etc., liberalism, dementia, rare, conservatism, senility, common. Number 3, multiple meaning awareness activity. It is a type of activity that develops students' awareness of words that may have more than one meaning. For example, the word spring may refer to a season of the year, the action of moving quickly, a small body of water, and an object similar to a coil. In pairs of groups, in pairs or groups, students can be asked to write sentences that demonstrate the different meanings of the word or to write definitions. Number 4, vocabulary expansion. It is a certain activity to help students expand the vocabulary use. The teacher can put a useful but unfamiliar word on the wall. He gives definition to the word, then gets the students to scan the reading passage for the word and highlight it through the passage. The class then discusses the other contexts in which the word might appear. Number 5, word part exercise. It is a particular activity which helps students derive meaning from word analysis. After teaching about word part, the teacher directs students to find words on the word wall that have identifiable word parts. The teacher asks questions to determine if students can define the words using their knowledge of word parts. Number 6, crossword puzzle. Using the vocabulary from the word wall, the teacher can create a crossword puzzle. Definitions can be used as clues, or sentences with blanks can be used if context clues lead students to the solution. Number 5, collocation. So far, we have considered vocabulary only in terms of single words or word families. However, vocabulary knowledge involves more than just knowing the meaning of a given in isolation. It also involves knowing the words that tend to co-occur with it, or collocations. Collocations are an important part in vocabulary learning. Commonly, collocations are associated with pairs such as adjectives noun or verb noun. However, collocations also often occur as multi-word linear sequences 3 to 5 words long, such as a short-term memory, to pay attention to someone or something, or to resolve a conflict. There are two types of syntactic collocations: the grammatical collocation and lexical collocation. The grammatical collocations are those in which a noun, verb, or adjective freely co-occurs with grammatical item. Lexical collocations consist of combinations of full lexical items such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. They include the combinations of verb plus noun, adjective plus noun, verb plus adverb, and adverb plus adjective. In conclusion, it has been discussed so far that vocabulary is very important for second language learners. Only with sufficient vocabulary, learners can effectively express their ideas both in oral and written form. Thus, they should have good ideas of how to expand their vocabulary so that they can improve their interest in learning the language. Knowing some principles on the way one's vocabulary develops in relation to memory will make us aware of the particular teaching techniques suitable for vocabulary teaching or learning. By using appropriate technique to learn new vocabulary, students will find it useful and interesting. The many classroom activities discussed in this section are worth considering since they have been backed up by reliable research findings on the related field. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you so much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.